welcome and thank you for taking this time to invest in your own well-being as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, as an intuitive. My goal is to create a really safe container today, and I ask you to join in with me in doing that. So I'm just going to turn off my video for a moment and lead us in a quick visualization. They'll let us get started and bring a really good energy into this space before I begin the presentation. So just get settled into your chair or the couch or wherever you're seated, and get comfortable. And just allow the breath to come naturally in and out of your body in whatever rhythm it wants to take. Just allow your breath to move you. And I ask you to visualize and imagine that we are all connected in a beautiful circle, a beautiful community of empaths coming together today. And into that circle, we're placing an intention of gratitude, communion, love, compassion, upliftment. This is a safe place. This is where we can speak openly about our gifts and about our abilities. So I ask you to help me hold this container this morning or evening, wherever you're hailing from. Just breathing in what it feels like to connect with other like-minded souls. This is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves, is to make this connection. My company is called Perceptive Souls. I relate a perceptive soul to someone being very tuned in and realizing that there's something such greater than ourselves. You know, something more eternal, something more everlasting. And my work over the past 6 years has been with intuitive empaths and highly sensitive people. And I've really embraced this part of myself. So I'm excited that you're here to learn and to grow. This webinar is called Empaths Holding Powerful Energetic Boundaries. And probably the number one question that I receive from my clients, from the people who are in my communities, is how do I manage all of the messages and the energies and the emotions from others that are coming into my field, and I feel exhausted by that. You know, what do I do? How do I turn this off? And so I felt really compelled to bring this teaching forward. It's a series of things that I've developed through my own tools and strategies that I'm going to share with you today. So here's what we're going to cover in this webinar, that energy is a language. You know, we have verbal language, we have body language, we have written language, and energy is also a language, and empaths can speak that very fluently, and we'll talk in depth about what that means. I like this idea of empaths as a perceiver as opposed to a receiver. So we're going to talk about what it means to sense messages and to not take them into your field. So then we're going to talk about something that I call personal energetic baseline. And this is a particular tool that I use, and I'm going to give you a snapshot of that today. And then we'll go into more depth about that in my upcoming course called Perceptive Souls from Surviving to Thriving. And I'll give you a little bit of information about what prompted me, what inspired me to create this course, and who it's appropriate for. And then we're going to go through a tool and how to hold powerful energetic boundaries. So I'll have you turn off your cameras. We'll go into a space, and I'll give you an easy tool that you can use when you go out into public, particularly, and how to hold your space and how to really be powerful. And then we'll open it up to question and answers at the end, as I said, off camera. So for those of you who don't know me very well, my name is Bevan Neiman. I've been coaching and teaching empaths and highly sensitive people for the past 6 years. I am passionate about community. As we said when we started and we created a container, community and finding your tribe, finding those like-minded souls who really understand you, who get you, who accept you for who you are, is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself as a perceptive person. And I've created multiple communities. I'm really passionate about this. I'm also a blogger. And for the past 2.5 years, I've been actively blogging on medium.com And you can check that out. I've written over 300 posts. I was kind of surprised by that when I checked it out last night, about my own experiences and about my own philosophy on how we move through this world and how we navigate this world, which often seems kind of overwhelming and chaotic and a lot of mixed energies, and what we can really do to be centered and grounded in that. And I took a deep dive for a couple of years into formal study with a metaphysical school in the auric field and spiritual anatomy. So some of what will come through today and also in my course is a reflection of some of those teachings and other things that I've learned. But primarily, I'm passionate about helping perceptive souls move out of survival mode and into thriving. And we're going to talk today about what the difference is between that. How do you identify if you're in a survival mode and when you move into thriving? And it's very likely that you could be thriving in certain parts of your life, but feel like you're in survival in others. And it's really common, and it's a journey to get there. So one of the things I wanted to share with you was my own journey and what really inspired me to do this. I actually came across this picture a couple of weeks ago on the left of myself, which was about 7 years ago. And it was very appropriate that Halloween I dressed up as a Gothic bride, because I was just a couple of months from leaving a long-term marriage that was not supportive of me. It was very dysfunctional. And I realized that it was depleting me and draining me of all of my energy. And I worked in a corporate job, and I often pulled 65-hour work weeks. I was on the road commuting in rush hour traffic. And if anyone here has been an empath and worked in customer service, you know what it is when people call you up and the reason they're calling is because they're angry and they're disturbed and they need you to fix something the company did. And so I was exhausted. I was experiencing chronic fatigue. I had chronic pain in my body. Many times I would just come home and just like collapse into bed. And I realized at that point that I was in survival mode, that there was a part of me that was able to step outside and be this observer and go, this isn't the way I should be living. And what I often say is that empaths go through this very similar process. You know, there's often a period of time when we're a child that we feel extremely tuned in, very spiritually connected. We express our gifts. Maybe we have vivid dreams and prophecies, or maybe we talk with spirit animals, or whatever that is for each person. It's very different. Everyone has different gifts. But then there's a point where it seems like almost every perceptive soul like turns it off. Either they turn it off because they've been rejected by others or ostracized, or they're trying to fit into mainstream society. And that was what I tried to do in my 20s and 30s, was just, you know, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have a home and have a career. And I wasn't sure why I had these unusual experiences. I didn't know how to explain them. I didn't know why I would receive certain intuitive messages, but then there were many times I didn't listen. And it came into some pretty bad consequences as a result of that. And so at some point I went through what I call a spiritual reawakening, which is, you know, who am I and why am I here? And I dove into meditative practice, deep spiritual connection. I invited people into my home through a meetup group and started leading programs. And essentially I had been a hermit. I had very few friends. And through this process, I found my tribe, found a wonderful circle that I call my soul family, a group of us who are really supportive of each other on this path. Some of you are on this call today. And so you can see this picture that my mother took this last summer, and you can obviously tell the difference in my energy field. And this whole process, this journey led me to really exploring what does it mean to be an empath. Like, I had watched Star Trek when I was a kid and I saw empaths. I just didn't know that that was a real thing. I thought it was just a fictional character. And then when I realized that this was something that described me, it became really important for me to give back and to be able to share the things that I've learned. And so just so we're all on the same ground, you know, because different people have a different level of experience with this, I thought it would be important to explore for a moment, what does it mean to be an empath? You know, some people say it's the ability to feel other people's emotions as if they're your own. And granted, that is probably the way that it shows up for most empaths. That emotional intensity, that not really knowing whether it's my emotion or somebody else's. And so this is a very common question that I receive. or having a direct experience of another person's way of being. So some people can feel physical sensations, they can sense mental energy, and we'll talk a little bit about the different types of energy language in a few minutes. And then even on the internet, there's a definition like a person with paranormal abilities. And I kind of laugh at this one. At first, I was like, maybe, am I offended by that? But really, I don't think it's paranormal because this is actually normal for people like us. It's not beyond normal. This is actually the way that we navigate the world. But the definition that I came to is the one over on the right, which is the ability to sense shifts in energy fields around you. We're taught by science that everything at the atomic level is energy. Everything is vibrating and it's energy in motion. And that gives off a specific frequency. Some things vibrate very slowly, and so it's a low frequency, and some vibrate very rapidly. And in the spiritual study, they talk about raising your vibration. And so when we come from this place of everything is energy, then empaths are really able to sense in to this language, right? It's a language. Just like any other language, it's like you can notice it and then decide what you want to do, decide how you want to react and respond to that. So some empaths are really good at sensing mental energy, which is not only we very self-reflective, we can feel and sense shifts in our own thought patterns, our own intentions, our own belief systems, but then we can also sense and feel that in others. And one of the ways this shows up that's really kind of interesting is that we have kind of a built-in lie detector. I call it the BS detector because when someone's talking or someone's explaining something to you and they are telling you one thing on the surface and yet you're sensing underneath that there's something completely different happening, it can be really discordant. And you're like, do I say something? Do I bring that up? Are they going to be offended if I tell them what they know? And this is something that happens. Some empaths are even able to hear other people's thoughts. And then emotional energy, as I said, is probably the most intense piece and the most intense way that empaths experience the world. We sense our own feelings and we have this kind of built-in emotional intensity. We're very heartfelt, very compassionate, deeply connected in. We care a lot about other people on our planet. And then we also pick up other people's emotions. So here's a good example of this. When I worked in the corporate world, I was in a staff meeting and I sat next to my supervisor who was getting really agitated about a particular topic. And it wasn't a topic I really cared very much about. And as he sat there and got more and more angry, I could feel in my belly this like ball of anger and rage, like starting to rise up and it's starting to come up towards the top. And I just said to myself in that moment, this is not mine. I asked for it to be released. And instantly that went away, So it takes, and we'll talk a little bit about the consciousness that it takes to realize when something's different than what your norm is. If you're just going along and you're in a kind of happy, relaxed state, and all of a sudden you have this spike, we're going to talk about what to do about that and how to manage that. Let's talk a little bit about physical energy. Some empaths are able to actually sense in their own body when there's energy blockages, when there's something going on a physical level that needs to shift or change, when there's an illness or something coming on. So the more you get tuned in to your own physical body, the more that you can in fact heal yourself and you can really connect in with that. But we also, many people who are deeply empathic and intuitive also connect in to the bodies of others. And these are often people who become healers. They're energy healers or even go into medicine or other things of that nature. I had this kind of funny occurrence. One weekend, my left shoulder was just killing me. It was hurting so bad. I thought, I'm going to go to the doctor on Monday. I think something's really wrong with me. And I actually called this family member on that Sunday and I said, how's it going? What's happening in your life? And this person said, oh, my arthritis in my left shoulder has just been killing me all weekend. And I just was like, that's not mine. And it just like, wiping it off. And it went away, And so even 900 miles away, we can have this level of connection with, especially with those that we're really close to. One of the pieces that's been really challenging for empaths is the collective energy. There was a lot going on this year, a lot of things with gender, with politics, with, violence and sexual abuse and all these things that were going on. And many of us can sense into things that are larger than just a one-on-one with another person. We can sense into, if we're in a group, what's happening in the group and the overall dynamic, or the organization or the company we work for, or the energy of our city. It's interesting when I drive sometimes here in Dallas Fort Worth. Some days I'm like, why is everyone driving so slow and everything feels so lethargic? And then other times it's like, get up and go, get up and go. And so there are different energies depending on what's happening. Some empaths can expand that out to a country or even the world and can feel that on a larger level. So that collective energy is something that's there. And sometimes it's the collective consciousness, or the unconsciousness, of what's happening. So that's a really interesting piece. And then there's environmental energies, which are shifts in the worlds around us. So that could be in your own living space or in the environments that you frequent. You notice when things are different and you're like, see that there's like something that's changed. Or at home, for me, I've studied feng shui, so I'm really interested in how the configuration of my home actually facilitates better energy flow and abundance and so forth. But some people are really tuned into the cycles of nature, the moon cycles, the seasons, the changing of the seasons, temperature, light, sound. And then I really wanted to put in there technology because, technology is so pervasive in our world. Here we are on an online platform, and there is a electrical and energetic signature that goes through all the text that we receive, all the stuff that goes on Facebook, all of this technology that we have in our life. And sometimes that can be really positive, and sometimes that can be really challenging for us as well. And then there's spiritual energy and spiritual gifts, and these are shifts that empaths sense in dimensions beyond. So some people can connect with people who have passed over. Some people can connect with their higher self. There's just like other dimensions. It's like there's something else beyond just this physical reality that we're connecting in with, and this is very common and very good. So these are the ways that we can become fluent in these languages of energy as we start to really pay attention. But picking up all this energy around us can be overwhelming. So this is kind of what life looked like for me when I was in survival mode. It's like, why don't I like to go to the mall? Why is that just so intense for me? Or traffic, or people's strong emotions, or gosh, if you ended up having an email inbox with 8,200 emails, I think I would just delete the whole thing and start over. But it can actually just lead to this overwhelm, this feeling of draining, and the loss of vitality. And so what's really, really important is to understand what those signs look like when you're in survival mode. And these are key things that I've noticed in my own life, and then with the clients who have come into my work and the people who are interacting with my communities. They report being drained by social interactions. Now, some empaths and highly sensitive people are introverts, so they recharge their energy by being alone, and some are extroverts. So there are extroverted empaths and HSPs as well. But they also need a lot of downtime and a lot of alone time to recoup after doing social interactions. So it's not that we can't be social. We enjoy being social, but it's selective in how we do that and what areas and activities we do. Many people are givers, givers and givers and givers, and we want to give, we want to help, we want to be in service, but sometimes we do that and we overextend ourselves to the point of exhaustion. And this has definitely been my case. I was volunteering, I was working 65 hours, I was doing this, I was doing that, giving to family. And, this is where you feel guilty saying no or setting healthy boundaries. And sometimes that's easier with some people and more difficult with others, and easier in some situations and more difficult in other situations. So, setting healthy boundaries is a part of what we're talking about today. And that happens on a mental level, which is like, what am I willing to take on? And what am I not? What are my belief systems? How do I feel about myself, on an emotional level? Do I value myself? Am I willing to put my own needs first so that I have something to give? And we'll talk a little bit about what thriving looks like. But setting boundaries is one of the key pieces that my clients always ask about. And then, a lot of empaths have had toxic relationships, and I include myself in this. I've had relationships with people who are farther on that narcissistic scale, with family, with a supervisor, with romantic relationships. And, we play out these patterns of being with a person who's a taker because we're a giver. until we realize, I want more than that for my life. I want to value myself. I want to hold a boundary. I know what kind of relationships support me and what kind of relationships don't. And so, it's not to the blame of someone else. They come into our life and they're our teacher, but we really want to look at what those relationships are, because if a relationship is draining you, then it's probably not working. It's probably dysfunctional. But it's difficult sometimes to make those choices, particularly when you're talking about family dynamics. Many empaths cannot differentiate where their energy field ends and someone else's begins. It's like we are born, I believe, like into the oneness, into the understanding that all is interconnected. And part of our growth path is how to be separate, how to be an individual, how to know who I am, what I want, what I value, what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. This is a part of the empath journey. It's kind of a little different than most people's spiritual journey, where they're kind of born into separation and maybe move towards the oneness. We're kind of moving the other direction because we were already very connected with that. There can be persistent negative thought patterns, don't trust the inner knowing, like, why am I getting these messages? Or I think that that's just my fear talking instead of like my actual inner wisdom. Many empaths and highly sensitive people talk about being a weirdo or an outcast, or maybe they were the only person in the family who expressed these kind of gifts, and so nobody understood. Why are you too sensitive? I don't understand. That makes me really nervous that you're telling me you have these dreams and now they're coming true. These are the kinds of things. And so this feeling like the weirdo or the outcast often leads them into drama, and energy depletion. And so there's isolation. It's like, I'm just going to be a hermit. And this is what I did for many years because I didn't feel understood. I didn't feel like people knew who I was or would accept who I was. So this is a graph that I created that's kind of based on some of the current science around sensitivity and then also my own observations. And one of the key things that I tell to my clients is, like, being tuned in requires you to be more conscious of your environment. So some people say, well, I just want to turn this off. And what I say is, I don't really think it's possible to turn it off. This is how we're wired, but it is possible to turn down the volume, and that requires being more aware. So instead of just kind of going into places and being with people and not really thinking that through ahead of time, if we are more conscious, then those of us who are over on this right-hand side of the curve into high sensitivity and extreme sensitivity to energy fields can actually thrive. Because the majority of human beings are kind of in this moderate place, which is why sometimes our world feels maybe more fast-paced, more loud, more busy, more pressured than those of us on this right-hand side would like it to be, because the majority of humans are kind of setting the tone for that. So what we need to do is take personal responsibility for what kind of lifestyle that we create for ourselves and what kind of self-care plan that we do. So I have been a Trekkie for as long as I can remember. I rushed home after school to watch the reruns of Star Trek. And I love using that as a metaphor for how empaths can be a perceiver, but not a receiver. So if you look at the left-hand column, is the Starship Enterprise. And it had some powerful tools. It had short-range scanners, and it had long-range scanners. And what they were doing was going out into space and putting out the signal and saying, okay, is there any life out there? Is there any danger out there? What do we need to know? And then, you'd hear some, ensign go, Captain, we have a 0.357 differential in the photon radiation. And they say, okay, well, let's go see what that is. And this is really what it's like to be an empath, right? We notice something, we're like, what's that? And then you get curious about it and you dive deeper and you sense into it and you use your scanning ability. So that's very, very different than the transporter. So we all have a transporter, which is the energy that we allow in. And if I remember correctly from the show, those who got to actually come into the ship were few and far between. They were really heavily vetted. And usually once they beamed in, there was like a security force that met them right there in the room. So this is more of the concept of, I want to scan and I'm going to pick up these messages and I'm going to see and I'm going to feel a blip in the energy field. But I'm not going to bring it in unless it's something that's positive and uplifting for me. Or if I feel it coming in, I can say, you know, that's not acceptable. I want that to be released. Because my personal belief in my study and in my own experience is that we don't have to accept anything into our field unless, you know, we say so. So this is a really powerful way to decide, you know, and a lot of people ask me, well, what about negative energies? You know, my personal belief is that everything comes from source. Everything is a positive, uplifting energy from source. And then human beings having free will can change that or transmute that into any way that they want to. And sometimes that stays in that positive vibration, and sometimes it goes into that negative vibration. But we can decide what comes into our energy field. We can decide what comes into our mental field, our emotional field, our physical field, and our energetic field. And so this idea of scanning but not allowing things into the transporter, I think is really, really vital. So I developed this tool called the Personal Energetic Baseline. And it's just my concept that each of us vibrates at our own unique resonance, our own hum, if you will. And the way we connect in with that is when we're in a calm and relaxed and confident state of being. Like right now, I love teaching and I'm in this space and I feel great and I can feel this container, this community of empaths who joined us on this call today. And so mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically, and spiritually, I'm really connected. And so, you know, when you're in that space, your wave may kind of look like this magenta area over here. You know, it's just kind of flowing. It's kind of great. And the way that you get in touch with that is by being alone. So my number one recommendation to anyone who's an empath or a highly sensitive person is find time every single day to be alone. Even if it's for 30 minutes, even if it's a walk around the block, just be in your own energy field, in the silence, in the quiet, without any stimulation, without, you know, YouTube videos, without music, without anything else, so that you can start to really connect in and listen to this personal energetic baseline. You start to feel or hear or sense this hum. For whatever reason, I can go and lay on my couch and I can just hold my hands open and I start to feel and get in touch with my energy field. You know, and we all have this, but empaths uniquely can get really in touch with this. And when we start to do this, and we practice this before we go out into public and we interact with other people, with situations and stressful, chaotic environments, you will then begin to notice when your field looks like the bottom graph. When there's a huge spike, it's like, whoo, something happened. And you just go, okay, what was that? And I asked myself, did I just experience anything that would cause me to spike below or above? So below is like, wow, I'm just all of a sudden feeling really depleted. But I slept really well last night. Like, what's up with that? Why is my energy being drained? Or something spiking up and it's like, why is my heart beating so much faster? Or why am I feeling this weird pain in my body? Or something's going on. And so you start to, you know, get this calm space, and then you notice these spikes as they come in. And it's a really powerful way. In addition to being alone, once you tune into this, you can start to see what's different. So once you've kind of connected with your PEB, as I call it, then go into a group setting and go into that space in that calm, relaxed, confident state of being. And then just watch and listen and pay attention to what's happening in your body as you interact with other people's energy fields. It's like an experiment that you can do just to see what happens, you know, and I do it pretty frequently. I'll just sense in for just like 5 minutes. I'll just, you know, we can kind of read other people sometimes. And so we're just there and I'm just seeing what's happening inside of me. How is that changing? How's that shifting? Is everything okay? Is everything fine? And we definitely see this shift when We have our own internal, like, emotional triggers and things of that nature, but we also can feel it when other people have those situations. So if you're watching other people's states of emotion and their mental states, and then you're sensing into your body and into your field what's happening, it's a really, really powerful tool to help you connect in with what's going on with that energy. And all of these things are just practices. It's like becoming really fluent in the language of energy takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes contrast. It takes being alone in some areas and then coming back into a space with other people and noticing what changes and shifts and what happens in that space. So let's talk about thriving, because obviously this is where we want to be. We want to be energized and vital and happy and healthy. And, this is about making conscious choices about the people and the environments and the activities you engage in. So choosing social interactions that uplift you, and only going and being there for as long as you actually feel comfortable. If you know that you can be somewhere maybe for an hour or two, only stay for 45 minutes and don't push yourself to that limit. I think in the past, before I knew about this, before I knew about being an empath, I would push myself to be out in public and to be out in places or to do things that would then lead me to that exhaustion. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't make a conscious choice. Like, I love going to concerts. Concerts are amazing. There's usually hundreds, if not tens of thousands of people. Everyone's vibing together. Everyone's enjoying the music. But I know that, like, the next day I'm going to have a little bit of an energetic hangover. So for me, it's worth it to go and do that. So it's like, you don't have to hold yourself back from trying new things or doing something you've always wanted to do. Just understand you may need some time to prepare yourself in the beginning, and then to kind of come down from that experience on the end. And if you allow for that space, then you can go and do whatever you want to do, and you can try whatever you want to try, and you can be in any size crowd that you feel comfortable with. And what that looks like for you is very different than it looks like for anyone else. And, the goal is to move past that judgment and to really be confident and really know what works for you and what doesn't. And this is about assertively communicating boundaries. This is what I am willing to take on. This is what I'm not. Here's where I'm willing to go. Here's what I'm not willing to do. Here's how many times I'm willing to help and serve. And here's when I really need to be taking care of myself and what that looks like. And that is a part of allowing other people to walk their own path. So one of the roles that empaths often get into is the rescuer, or the fixer. I call it, people are not a project. Like, if you have a person who could be a potential friend, you're like, well, that person really has potential. They could be really creative. They could just do such and such. And that's the thinking that happens. This is how we get into these relationships where we're giving and someone else is taking. And they're looking for us to help heal their wounds, and we're looking for them for validation. And when we get out of this place where we need to rescue or fix other people, or we don't need to take their emotions or problems into our field, we can lovingly hold compassionate space. And the exercise we'll do in a few minutes will actually help you with this process. This is where we get freedom and release, and we stop holding all this stuff, and we stop holding things in our body that are not our own, and this is a really, really key part of going into thriving. And this is like learning about what it means to have a healthy, loving, and reciprocal relationship. That could be different for each person, what you need, but it's being really clear about that. And I love the word reciprocal, because it says that it's give, and it doesn't have to be scorekeeping or anything of that nature. It's not like, you did this for me, so I'm going to do this for you. But on a large scale, is it fairly balanced? Is everyone coming from a loving place? Does everyone have a loving intention? Are people having a commitment to doing their own inner work? Are they coming from this healthy position? And they make a commitment to that. It doesn't mean we're trying to be perfect. It doesn't mean that none of us can be friends or have romantic relationships or family relationships with people if they're working on their stuff. Like, that's not what it's about. But it's overall, is this the right fit? And that because your body feels good, you feel energized when you're with that person. And this is the difference between the two. And most importantly, you are a powerful creator of your own reality. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your words, and your actions are in alignment. They're taking you where you want to go. They're uplifting you. They're uplifting other people. They're moving you in a direction that will help you to be as healthy and vital as you like to be. And so this is moving out of those negative, persistent thought patterns and into something that's more affirming. And it's sort of catching yourself. I mean, we all have those negative patterns. We have an inner critic. We have what I call the inner skeptic. We have these different personas. We have fear. Sometimes there are things that come up. So it's not like moving past that and saying, oh, I'm not going to address that. But how do we move into a place that we acknowledge what's happening, what's coming up, and then we say, I'm consciously choosing to move forward in this way. And trusting and following intuition. So there's a couple of things that have happened to me in my life intuitively. One of them was 10 years ago. I got this intuitive message that I was supposed to sell my house in Indiana, pack up and move to Texas. 900 miles away. I didn't know a soul. I hadn't met the person who I was going to work for. And I just did it. I just packed the truck and I did it, and it turned out to be the most amazing thing, because this is where I learned about being an empath. This is where I created a community. This is where I became a coach. And all of these things flowed forward, and I met my soul family. And so when we start to listen, even when things seem radical, it's really important to tap into that. And in my course, From Surviving to Thriving, I really talk in depth about how to understand what an intuitive message is versus what is a fear-based message, which is what is your mind doing rational, logical thinking. And all these things are helpful information, but they're different in their presentation. And communicating and connecting with your tribe and your soul family. Balancing alone time and together time, and then also giving. But here's a really important piece of this. Most empaths love to give. We struggle with receiving. We struggle with receiving compliments. We struggle with asking for help. We struggle with, receiving abundance and love and compassion into our lives. And this is a part of learning how to thrive, is learning how to receive and to be a gracious receiver. So it's definitely something that I've been working on. So I just want to take a brief moment to tell you about the course, and this may be for you, or it may be something that would be a great fit for someone that you know in your life. In order to move from surviving to thriving, there's a series of steps, and there's some key processes that I've identified. And the first module, which is 3 parts, really is about self-protection, because when we're in that survival mode, when we're just really desperate, when we're exhausted, when we're depleted, what we need to do is protection. We need to care for ourselves first. So we need to learn how to manage our thoughts. We need to learn how to manage our emotions and set boundaries about, what we'll do and what we won't do. And this is the place where we kind of move out of being a doormat or a sponge for everybody else's stuff and allowing people to walk on us. And this is where we actually become assertive and we actually move into that space. And the second module is self-reflection, which is how important it is for every empath to do a daily self-care routine. Part of my routine is to get up every morning. I usually read for an hour. I like to walk in the forest. I do some meditation, and then I start my day. And this is the very first time in my life that I've ever put myself at the front of it. I always got up, put somebody else at the front. I made breakfast. I rushed off to work and I did somebody else's things. And I finally decided that I was going to put myself first over the last few years. And it has made such a huge difference in my health, in my vitality, in my attitude, and just everything, my approach. And so this is a part of this self-reflection, is like really learning that it's not selfish to focus on you. Releasing the need to rescue others. And this is where we talk about this. And this is all about that focus. And then empaths have a beautiful ability to heal thyself. Many of you have probably already done some of these works, but I share some practices and modalities for self-healing and ways that you get connected with your energetic baseline, with your physical body, just really get connected in with your emotions and your energy field and really heal yourself from the inside out. And then what happens is you set off on a new direction. And you really begin to choose the relationships that support you. And I have a great outline that shows the green flags, as I call them, which are like, this is healthy and loving and reciprocal, and here's the red flags. So as you enter into a new relationship, you can actually see, okay, which side of it does this happen on? And people can actually develop their own green and red flags that are particular to the things that you need in a relationship, but this is a good guideline for that. Learning how to listen and trust intuition and open yourself to that field of greater wisdom and greater knowledge that's available to all of us, and then making those conscious choices to improve your life. So this is a little bit about what I cover, and it comes through in videos and exercises and booklets, and there's continuous access to the course. So most people would go through it in, say, maybe 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how fast and how much integration, but it's open, so that so there's some flexibility to do that. And then I provide additional support with live monthly community calls, which are a little more interactive than what we're doing here. But you'll get a sense of that when we do the Q&A at the end. And then I allow people to email me by Thursday evening any questions they have, or scenarios or things are coming up in their life. And on Fridays, I'll send out an email to the entire group of participants with frequently asked questions and some of my answers or thoughts. So it's kind of email coaching. I do also provide a discounted price on my coaching packages for one-to-one coaching support during the course. And then, as I said, ongoing access to modules. And this is my beta test as we go into this first round. So I'm actually inviting 100 empaths and highly sensitive people to beta test this course by the end of March. And then there will be a short survey at the end of each module, and there's a reduced course fee. So the course fee for this course is only $147. It will go up after that point, after March. And so this isn't a registration information. You can go to my website at perceptivesouls.com and get connected with that. And what the beta test will do is help me to improve the course modules, maybe record new videos, provide different kinds of support. And so anyone who's taken it from the beginning will actually benefit from those additional upgrades as we go on.